Hey everyone, welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. I'm Michael Regan, as always, with my lovely and talented co-host, Catherine Peterson. And today we're bringing a special guest to you in an interview series that we are now exploring and quite enjoying, where we bring industry experts from the housing industry into the podcast. And rather than giving the same old boring questions and answers that you hear on everybody else's podcast, we really get to know this person by weaving in a little bit of opportunity to go off-road. And that's really our style. We're going to enjoy spending some time today doing that. But before I set this up for too long, I'd like to welcome our friend Catherine back into the frame. Catherine, good to see you today.
Nice to see you too, Michael. Today is going to be so fun because I think one of the more fun people in our industry, Ken Perry, is with us. He's another KP, so don't get us confused. We have answered to that at the same time before. So Ken, if you don't know him, find him. He has done a ton for our industry. He runs the Knowledge Coop, which is a social learning system. And that is done through collaboration and education, which is great. He really has made learning fun. He has 3 kids, a great wife, has been married for a very long time. I won't even say the number of years. And he's great to follow on social media, but also he's just great to talk to. And that's what we're going to do with him today. So thank you so much, Ken, for being here. It's great to see you.
That was such a cool introduction. Well done. Thank you. It's 28 years. We'll be 29 in July. So you can say it out loud. We're doing a 30-day trip next year. We're doing 30 days in Europe. So 1 day for each year we've been married. So we're getting there.
That's crazy. That's a long time. So
I was only 20.
Have gotten married when you were 12.
I was 20. So I'm going to hit 50 this Christmas.
That's great. That's great. Well, congratulations to you and your wife. Well, we were talking a little bit off camera about just how fun you make everything, including learning. And that's one of my favorite things about you. So where did all those creative ideas come from? Like, you've pulled us aside. I remember at one point, I can't remember if it was who was the third person there. I think it might have been Michael. And you were like, oh my gosh, check this new video out that we did. And it was the Barbie themed thing that was going to be released soon. And where did all those great creative ideas come from in that brain of yours?
Oh man, I've always had them. I would describe myself as unhinged. I'm not really attached to anything in my head. My head is able to be a free thinking. My head kind of travels around and comes back with things. So I don't know. It just happens for me. And funny thing is, most things happen last minute. I actually just had this conversation with somebody at our company where I was like, I should probably be careful because a lot of my speeches I create the morning of the speech. And I just was in Casper, Wyoming this week, I don't even know what day it is. And last week. And it was literally the night before my speech. I'm like, I kind of know. And it was a keynote. So I want it to be really good, but I think around a lot of things. And then usually the morning of something is when I go, okay, this is it. And I think that's part of I don't need the prep work. My prep work is constant, right? I'm always taking things in and I'm always seeing things. And then when it's game time, it's like, okay, here's what's coming out of it. So out of all of the chaos comes this one thought that thought usually many times becomes something really cool.
So it's almost like your procrastination helps you be more creative, and you have some strengths in the last minute if you actually wait, which is fascinating.
Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech was written on the stage. It was not actually in writing. Somebody said, tell him about the dream, Martin. And he just started going. And the mastery is you constantly take things in and talk about them. And so if I'm giving a speech, it's never something I haven't talked about. It's usually something that I've thought about, I've researched, I've talked to other people about, I've ran things, and then it all just hones in at go time. And so, it's always well researched, but it's also not going to be something that is super structured. It's going to be all over the place a little bit, but it will hone, and in the end, it will do its job.
I wonder if that's the secret sauce, Ken, because when Catherine asked the question, how is it that you always seem to make something fun? I wonder if some of that is the fact that you're willing to live in that space where there's a little bit of dynamic tension of, I'm not exactly sure where we're going next, but I embrace that and we go with it and we just figure it out as we go. I feel like that's one of the I mean, not to compare our professions with other professions, but I think that's one of the skills of a great comedian is the willingness to just let the joke take a flow and follow the flow. And you seem to do that very effortlessly. It seems like a natural ability. Were you a kid who was affirmed like, oh, Ken's a funny kid or Ken's an interesting kid? What did people affirm in you when you were a younger guy?
Yeah, that's a great question. Funny has always been my thing. In fact, when we would gather around like with the cousins and we'd be like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And let's like act out what you want to be. And I was always comedian. Like I was always going to be a stand-up comedian. That was from the earliest moments of what do I want to be when I grew up after cowboy. Because at first I wanted to be a cowboy because I thought those guys were super cool. My next job was comedian and it always was that. And so I'd always kind of try lines out. And I had a really tough family group where like you had to bring your A game or they were going to make fun of you for not being funny. And so I always had to do that. And then I also, I jumped from school to school. So I lived in 20 houses before I was 20. And so I would have to go into a new school. And my way of fitting in would be if I could make a couple people laugh, they'll like me. And from there, I can grow a community. And so I use humor to make friends. And then because of my ADHD, after about second grade, things started to actually, after third grade, I skipped fourth grade. And so third grade, I was super smart. And then fourth grade, I skipped. And then when I went into fifth grade, I pretty quickly realized my ADHD was kicking in. It was making it tougher. It wasn't fun anymore. It was more, now I can't focus on school. Now I can't do homework. Now I can't, like all these things where I'm not gifted at those certain things. And from there, I was like, well, the only way I get through school, and I learned this like literally fifth grade, I remember, if I can make my teacher love me and think I'm awesome and funny, then I don't have to do all of the work that everybody else is doing because they won't want to give me a bad grade. And so from then, I just made my teachers my best friends. And so that's what I would do. As soon as I walked in, it's like, how can I make them laugh? And so it was more of a making up for my weaknesses. And it totally worked. Like I deserved Fs quite often. I only got one. I only had to retake one class. It was sophomore English. And that's because my teacher died in between sophomore and junior year. So I couldn't go fight my grade. But like I've had them give me bad grades. And I'm like, look, dude, and then gotten them to give me the grade that I needed to be able to get by. And so it's a skill I've always had and I've had to use to offset other weaknesses.
Got it. So it was on board even back then. And so you may not have understood at that time the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset, but maybe your instincts were demonstrating a growth mindset that F wasn't fail, it was just figure it out.
Yeah, and my dad's super funny. So I also grew up in a funny family. My dad's hilarious, and so I have a lot of his characteristics. But yeah, I didn't know anything about mindsets back then. All I knew was survival of like, how do I get into the next and how do I make it fun? Like you mentioned fun. I wanted classes to be fun. Like if you're a teacher in high school and you're coming in and you're not going to make me laugh, I'm going to do something to make this class happy. Because I think everybody deserves to have a good time and everybody deserves to have a little bit of fun. And so I was doing that way early on. My government class, my government teacher and I would just debate the entire class, like funny back and forth. And I would research. It's like junior year in high school. I would research so that I could come in with my A game so that we could fire off back and forth. And it was one of my favorite classes. And he gave me, I got a really good grade in that class, but it was because I could go research, bring something that would make everybody else's experience better. So it's what I've always done.
So we had brought up a little bit of working within your gifts. And like if I try to think of your gifts, I can think of a whole lot, but I'll be curious what your view of that is and how you've been doing that with everything you've been working on. You have a lot of projects. So tell us a little bit about that.
And I have a strong opinion about people sharing their gifts. I think that if people share their weaknesses, everybody's like really supportive of them and, oh my gosh. And like, we care when people share their weaknesses. As soon as somebody shares their gifts, there's this like, oh, somebody's into himself. Like, it's so bad that we don't celebrate gifts, but we are all on board for celebrating weaknesses. But I'm very, very firm on what my gifts are. And I'm also very firm on weaknesses, but my gifts, I can make people laugh. I research, I love research. So if there's anything that I'm talking about, I normally know a lot about that subject or I wouldn't talk about it, right? So that's always been a gift of mine. And then the gift, like I said, unhinged, Like we just launched an AI product that is now, it searches guidelines in Fannie, Freddie, FHA, and VA, and we're adding USDA and all the others. But my gift is to be able to see something that's happening and go, okay, let's get in front of that because I think this could be awesome. So I can see awesome when awesome doesn't exist. I can't plug in awesome. I need an entire team around me to make that happen. But I'll always be the one with the idea that goes, no, I think this actually will work. And typically they do. But only when I have a support team that can make that actually work. And when I can get my support team to be on board with the same thing, which can be sometimes hard when you have ideas. It's like, if I have 20 ideas and one of them's good and you have to go pick which one, it can be hard. So now I've got to communicate, yeah, I know I had 20 ideas, but like this one's actually the one. And so that's hard too, is figuring out how to make sure people understand when something's real with me.
So you talked about your team, and I've met most of your team. They are really dynamic. I think they're all talented people. But now my question is, I want to back up the story a step or two. Did you have a sense of, I know the unique ability that I need for this role, and therefore go find a person to fit that unique ability? Or are you really good at seeing someone and saying, there's just something about you I like, and I see your unique ability. Let's create something that highlights that. What's your typical approach as a business leader?
Well, when I started the company, I had to do everything, right? So it's 2003 and I had just me. And so I didn't have the luxury or the privilege of focusing on my unique ability because I had to go fill the seats in my classes. I mean, when we launched, it was just me training loan officers on how to do loans, from marketing to get business to, everything involved in the process, reading an appraisal, reading a credit report. And so I had to do everything. And it was hard because I didn't have anybody to hand things to. My mother-in-law came on board in 2004 and became my assistant, and still is probably the best employee I've ever had in my entire, business. Because
That's
she stayed
such a
with
good
me.
answer, by the way.
Oh yeah, she's amazing. But she always would go, her big thing was, let me take everything that you don't want to do or aren't great at, and I'll go do those things, because she saw in me that when I'm on fire, like it's unstoppable. And so she knew if I could just get people, when Ken hands me people, I'll get them signed up for the class, I'll get the certificates done, I'll get the organization done, I'll collect on the payments. Like if she realized if she just does that, it lets me do my thing. Now, in bringing other people on, yeah, we've always tried to go, okay, well, what do you love? Like, what's your best day? Like, what does that look like? And this is a conversation that doesn't just happen once. It literally happened before I got on this call. We had a meeting where it's like, okay, is this person in the right seat? Like, are they doing what they love, or what are they amazing at? Like, we always do what's one word that you would use to describe this person? Then let's get them a job that can make sure they're doing that, highlighting that thing. And so that's always been a big deal with us, is making sure that somebody is in the right seat and loves what they're doing. Like if you don't love it, it's sad. And I know people don't love their jobs. That's super sucky. I've never once not, I don't want to say I've never not loved my job. There's been like last year sucked. But for the most of 99.9% of my job, I've loved every single day of this job. And so I want that for everybody, which comes when you get somebody working in their gifts.
So good, Ken. And when I think about the way you just described that, Catherine and I look at a lot of different assessments that we'll use in order to help us not only identify things to expand the conversation that we're having with someone, because we can start to see things through different lenses. But I really look at assessments as they have to be multipliers. Yes, I have to see clearly that the assessment's helping me understand more about myself. Two, it has to help me understand things about other people. But most importantly, third is help me build a strategy now to make things easier for other people, because look, life is already hard. And so when I hear you say putting people in roles that they love and that they have fun and that they thrive in, you're really getting to that third level, which is, let's build a strategy. Let's build something where you're highly likely to succeed and contribute in a massive way, because we're in a zone that you're going to love being in. Not to nerd out on the assessments, by the way, but that's one of the reasons I love the Colby A index. That's one of my favorite tools for that, because where DISC might look at your architecture through, your natural and adaptive style, it's a little bit like your your bones and your flesh, like the architecture of your body. Colby kind of looks at your head and your heart. It looks at where are you naturally going to get drawn back to, no matter where the pressure points are. And once I know that about someone, and it sounds like you're living it there at Knowledge Coop, is I want people to be in those roles where they thrive, because I think that's where they're most likely to contribute massively to our success.
When we use the Enneagram here, like everybody gets an Enneagram test, and I've never seen anything like it. Like it's helped us so much when somebody throws something out that's super aggressive. And this literally happened in the coop. So we use our coop to communicate as a company, just like we have other people use their coops to do the same. And in our coop, I put something out there, and one of our guys just like fired out a comment. And I was like, holy, what? And I went, oh, he's an 8. Okay. And I was really quickly able to go, okay, well, this is what that means. This is why he said it. And man, am I thankful that some people will speak up. Like the 8s will speak up. And so then you go, okay, cool. And it would be easy if you don't understand somebody's profile to be able, it would be easy to just be like, well, let's just get a write-up on that. Like that's, clearly somebody needs to be talked to or whatever. No, they don't. Like they're being themselves. And themselves is what I love about them. And so the trick is knowing that helps me then be able to coach that a little bit and like, okay, you're feeling like that comment was okay, but actually how other like a 9 in our team is going to freak out based on that, because now they're like, they don't want conflict. And so they're going to see that and be like, oh, what's happening? And so it helps us at least wrap everybody around, how does all of this work together with all of these different personality types?
Really good. Okay, one more question on that then. So we're talking about it in the context of how well it can work when well thought out, well designed, well engaged. But I'm sure you've had someone who, for whatever reason, just didn't, it wasn't a question of you identifying their natural ability. It wasn't turning into a good fit on the team. How have you handled that? Because now you're actually recognizing it with a little advanced level of understanding, and yet sometimes we still have to say, hey, we love you, but this just isn't working out. How have you handled that as you recognize people's unique abilities?
Man, it is so hard. I'm in therapy, and I think everybody should be in therapy. And one of the things that we deal with me and my therapist, we've dealt with it for a year now, is I can't always change people, nor is that my role. And I used to, I've owned this company 21 years. For I would say 19, I thought my role was to be able to be a radical difference maker in the lives of the people that work here, and that I'd be able to change them. And so when people would leave, I'd be like, I can't believe I didn't do my job. I can't believe I wasn't able to impact them. I can't believe they didn't see how much I love them. Like my love for people here is like, it's enormous. And so I get hurt really easily. And I have been hurt a lot by people who have left. And it's like, I was taking it really personally. And now I realize I'm a part in somebody's journey. And so when you can detach yourself and go, I'm here for a couple chapters, and then the rest of the chapters are going to be without me. And I have to be okay with that. As soon as I figured that out, it helps me go, if they're not a fit, it's not a fit. Like I'm helping by helping them get into something else that's more of a fit, but it doesn't mean that I need to change that person to make them see who they are. Like they are or they aren't. And that's hard. And it feels so cold even saying it out loud, but it's not cold. It's love to really just let somebody be their best self or their not best self, and to not take that on myself.
Catherine, I know I said that was my last one, but I'm going to jump in one more because
I know we have so much good content.
There was a gold nugget in there, and our audience, Ken, is primarily entrepreneurial people. They're either small business owners or they're sales professionals who are 100% responsible for driving the income that they get to earn. And so often these folks have poured everything into what they do. I mean, just like you. So they would totally relate to what you said. They've poured their lives into this business. And you just described something that I hear all the time. And what a nugget of wisdom. It's really important to realize that we are intersecting with other people's journeys. And sometimes that intersection will last for a season, sometimes for several seasons. Maybe in some rare case, we'll get someone who makes a career out of it. But it's healthy to recognize that I can't work under the assumption that just because I've poured everything as the one who took the risk and launched the business, that everyone else joins me with that exact same passion. They may not see it the way I do. And hearing you describe it that way, I think will resonate with some of our listeners, because it's not uncommon for me to coach someone on the other end of the line who's flabbergasted that after all they poured into somebody that they could just leave and take every investment and throw it down the tubes. And I'm so glad to hear you say it the way. I'll finish with this thought, Catherine. You know, we all read Good to Great maybe 20 years ago, and there's that analogy of getting the right people in the seats on the bus. And one thing I've had to remind people after reading that is, hey, listen, if you find out that person's not on the right seat on the bus and you can't find the right row, you don't have to throw them off the bus while you're doing 55. You can pull over to the bus station, give them a bus transfer, help them get on the right bus. And I think that is an empathetic approach to this idea that not everybody's going to be with us forever. Help them find their way, and that will still stick with you. That'll be part of your legacy. They'll be telling the story about you to other people down the road of, oh my gosh, this guy or this gal helped me get to where I needed to go. So thanks for sharing that, Ken.
Absolutely.
So Ken, I know another thing you're passionate about is this industry. And there was a period in time that your podcast deals with a little bit, and let's bring that up, lessons from last time. But at that period in time, 2008, 9, 10, kind of the reputation of the mortgage industry wasn't great, right? I think we ranked right around, used car salesman. So where do you think that is now? And where do you see the future of that going? And then also make sure to bring in your podcast. I want to hear more about that too.
Yeah, it's interesting because it was like in 08 and 09, if you were at a party and somebody said, what do you do for a living? You're like, I'm a stripper. I deal drugs. Like what's better than loan officer? You know, we really got hammered, and I have loved this industry, and this has been my home for a lot of years. And so I hated that. I hated watching people, especially the way the media spun all of that. They did us no favors. And so I think that was really hard. I think this is totally different. I don't see mortgage people in any bad light right now, anywhere I look. I think realtors are at risk of it right now, big time, because the people forget that other people read social media. Like, why would somebody throw something on Facebook that damages the reputation of their entire industry? And we're seeing that sometimes in mortgage, but not as much. And then in real estate, I think where 08 was more, it impacted the lives of a lot of people that are not in mortgage and real estate, right? The foreclosures, the everything. And so they were angry, and so they paid attention. And this time, it's only affecting loan officers and real estate people, right? The average consumer is not mad about the rates because they have a 3%. They're average, unless you're trying to buy a house for the first time. The average homeowner doesn't. I have no problem with my loan officer. Like, they did a great job for me. Now I have 3%. So I think just the spectacle is different. I think that where real estate agents have to be careful is talking so much about their compensation. And I know that they're angry, but doing that in a public forum is making every buyer go, wait, I don't have to pay 3%. Like, they've really done themselves a disservice. I think we have to be careful how much we say out there in the world where they don't understand the real problems. They don't understand how it's always been, that type of stuff. So yeah, I think I think it's a different perspective this time. And the funny thing about the lessons from last time podcast is that was originally going to be a podcast to talk about how we got through 08 and how we use 08 skills and lessons to get through now. And I think we've talked about that twice because what we found in that podcast is people have a lot bigger issues than mortgage. And that was a real perspective bringer for me, because I thought, when I talk to people, it's typically about, like, when I talk to people in the industry, it's usually about what's happening in the industry. And so it starts becoming heavier than it really needs to be, where it's like, I just thought everybody was so devastated by the world. But then as I interview people, I find out that people's kids are hurting, that people's spouses have cancer, that people have, all of these real issues that are out there that are like, dang, these are way bigger. Let's talk about getting through cancer. Let's talk about getting through. My most recent interview was somebody who did 5 years, I want to say, in prison for dealing meth to a Catholic priest who had a full-on network of people he delivered meth to. And I just finished watching The Gentleman, so now I'm like kind of like that. But how do you get through prison? I just booked a guy for my podcast who just did like 15 years in prison for mortgage fraud. Do you think the mortgages are what he's upset about, or do you think, working in a prison system, knowing that you're there because of something you did, like, there's way bigger issues. So I think it's important that we're careful not to give this too much weight, and that we go, okay, yeah, this sucks. Nobody's going to say it doesn't suck, right? But also on a level, there's a lot bigger things that we need to focus on. And if you come out of this being a worse person than when you started, it's going to be a real shame. And somebody said, I think it was probably Michael, but somebody said, your team's going to remember how you led through COVID. And it just stabbed me right in the heart. I'm like, damn it, are they really? Because I don't want them to remember, because I sucked as a leader in COVID. I didn't know what to do. I'd never seen anything like it. And so I think if the same thing exists right now, is people will remember how you were as a loan officer during the downturn. Like, your family's going to remember. And as a guy who wasn't, like I said, I wasn't very good in 2020. I wasn't the best version of myself. And when somebody said your family will remember how you acted when you weren't allowed to go and get on a plane, I'm like, oh crap, then I better change the way I'm acting. Like, that's just a conviction that I think everybody needs right now, is people will remember, did this draw you closer to your family? Did this draw you closer to your friendships? Did you show your appreciation to your friends more? Did you do the right things to, keep yourself mentally in the game? So, yeah.
I think that's one of your greatest gifts, Ken, because when I've spent time with you, you have this incredible ability to take things from the outside in. And what I mean by that is lessons from last time could sound a lot like, oh, let's look at these macro level lessons that we all learned from, this moment in time in history that we all happen to live through. And yet somehow you got people to look inside at, who was I during that season? What was I experiencing? What was happening around me? And what did I really learn to grow from that? And then you help people pull out those stories, and you give them the platform to do it, but you also give them you pull it out of them based on the way you approach it. You set it up in such a way that says, really, that's the lasting story. That's the real lesson from last time, is, not what happened to Shearson Lehman. We can all watch, whatever documentary you want on A&E and learn about that. But I want to hear about you. I want to hear what you went through. And so as you look at the evolution then of the way that podcast theme shifted, tell me a little bit about your vision for where you go in the future as you're featuring interesting people, whether they're industry experts or, I don't know, meth dealers. Where will you go in the future of your podcast?
Great question. The speech I just gave in Casper was my first keynote. I don't give keynote speeches. Like, if I keynote a seminar, it's talking about the industry and what's happening in it. So this was my Momentum Builder was my first real opportunity to stand on stage and talk about life. And then this was a keynote where it's like, okay, now I'm actually shaping a keynote, because I've always had this dream of being not the guy that you say, here's the compliance guy, Ken. Like, I have a lot more than that. I just happen to love compliance. But giving the speech, the keynote I gave was called Lessons from Last Time. And so it's basically all of the lessons I've taken away from all of these interviews that we've done. And there's 60 something interviews now. And then what can those lessons teach us so that we can be better humans based on what other people have gone through? And in the very end of my speech in Casper, I said, the thing is, I could interview everybody in this room, because we've all gone through difficult times and we all have lessons that we've taken from those times. So it's not unique to mortgage at all. It's everybody's got their own stories. And for some, they got through it. And for some, they're still getting through it. I interviewed Andrea Bannister, who used to work at the Knowledge Coop. She was my assistant. She was amazing. And I interviewed her. She went through Columbine, and she's still getting through that. Like, her best friend was killed and her boyfriend was shot, and she's still getting through that. That doesn't just go away, but it's a process. And so what is her process? Where's she at now in it? It's something that's a constant life work for her, right? And so I think with the podcast, at least, we're going to continue to reach outside of mortgage, because everybody needs this help of people who've gone through struggles, and we're being really careful about who we bring in. Like, it's got to be, we want the lesson to be there. We don't want to just tell stories of pain, right? If it's like, oh, what is they call that? They call that misery porn. Like, we don't want to create misery porn where it's like, listen to this horrible story. But we want to bring powerful healing for people. And what I've told everybody, and this is, as a parent, this is like one of my biggest lessons for my kids. Anytime you go through bad things, if you can realize that somebody else is going to go through something and they're going to need you to have gone through this, or they won't get their healing, like, if that's what you can realize, it helps you get through the pain. And so even last year when we were going through layoffs, I called my friends who'd already laid people off. And I'm like, tell me I'm not the most horrible human ever. tell me I'm not the worst strategist ever. I needed them to tell me that this happens to normal people, because it's easy to feel like you're the only one who fails, or you're the only one who does stupid things, right? It's easy. And then you talk to somebody who you look at on a higher platform than yourself, and they tell you, no, I actually did that exact same thing, or this is how I did it. Like, there's so much power in that. And so all last year, I'm like taking notes. I journal a lot because I'm like, somebody's going to need this. Somebody's going to have to go through layoffs, and good thing I did, or I wouldn't be able to help them. And so that's kind of my focus now, is really build those stories and help people share them and be vulnerable. There's power in sharing.
And there's so much in that. I think that people should rewind like 2 minutes and listen to that like 3 times. It's going to be my tip for this podcast, because I think you're exactly right. As you're going through something, what are the pieces that I'll be able to help somebody else down the road? And then reaching out. I think that we don't do that enough. And I think that's one of your gifts, is reaching out and saying, hey, I'm struggling with this. Tell me that this is okay. Because I think that that's so important. And I think we can be islands and think it's just us. And I think that's so, so, so important for everybody, not just people in the mortgage industry or real estate industry. I think that's just a human thing to do. So thank you.
Absolutely. I'm super competitive, and so I need to gamify everything. I'm taking power from the pain, right? Pain hurts, but when you take its power, like, pain doesn't want you to share that, because pain wants everybody else to hurt too. And so if you can take that pain, turn around and help somebody out of it, you stole the power from that pain in your life. And that's helping me. So every time somebody comes up, and I've had so many people come up at seminars and tell me their story, and they're like, that helped. Like, this just happened in Casper. I had a line of people like, I went through this and that story helped me. It's like, yeah, get that pain. Like, I feel like I attacked the pain and I won for the good guys when I'm able to share it. And the longer you keep it inside, the more you let that thing have power over you.
Yes.
I feel like I'm way overdue to spend some time with Mindy. That feels like the kind of wisdom that young lady would have for all of us. Am I wrong?
Dude, I am 1/10 of the person that I am if I don't have Mindy. I mean, 90% of who I am that's good is Mindy being in my life, because she's a therapist. She specializes in ADHD and marriage. Go figure. And yeah, she's taught me how to be present, how to think, how to spend time, how to look for everything. And she also recommends really good books for me to read. So there's a book called Driven to Distraction. It's a really good ADHD book that helps you through ADHD. She recommended, The Happiness Trap. Everybody needs to read The Happiness Trap. It's brilliant at its teaching you how to take your pain and hold it out here and look at it, so that it doesn't get to sit inside of you. And so she'll read something and just be like, okay, this is the thing right here. And then I get the benefit of her wisdom as well.
So good. Catherine, I always like to look for a few recommendations from our guests. Ken, let's put those in the show notes for sure, just to check out a few. I know anytime I'm with someone, it's tempting to say, okay, show me your Amazon book orders. I don't care if it's audio or physical. Just tell me what's there. And those are a couple of great ones. Catherine, as you bring us home, any final thoughts and or questions for our brother Ken?
I just want to say, first, thank you. But second, I am so excited to see how things evolve, because I think that every time I meet you, I'm like, oh, I want to spend more time with that guy. So I feel lucky that you're my friend, and I feel lucky that we had this time, because it's so fun to watch. It's like, and even when you're not being that funny, silly guy, there's just so much there. It's like, I could dig and talk to you probably 10 more times. So thanks.
Catherine, you think you're lucky. I get the pleasure of having not one, but 2 KPs in my life. That's not a bad gig.
That's true.
What's funny, Catherine, is
Catherine, we met, I think, at Patrick Palmer's dinner is the first time that we spent time together. And if you've never been to a Patrick Palmer dinner, then you got to get one. But the last thing I would say about that is that is life to me, right? So sitting around a table with amazing people, sharing and being way more than just that, shallow level, like going to that deeper level has been so great. And I've found that to be one of my favorite things in life. And Daniel Harkavy, I don't know if you know him, but he said on our podcast, he was talking about life can change if you buy somebody coffee. And it's obviously more than that, but it's that if we can just share a dinner together, if we can share, some time and dive deeper, then how's it going? Great. Like if we can get to know each other, like that's kind of what makes life rich. And it also is it just adds so much to your own way of living, in my opinion.
So good. Hey, listen, we, the three of us will hopefully be together in a room very soon, depending on our drop date for this podcast. Ken, we look forward to seeing you on stage at the Mortgage Mastermind Summit. I think you're going to get a great opportunity from the stage to bring another great topic to the group, and probably lots of gems like we caught today. I cannot wait to be there live with you. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Ken or the Knowledge Coop, please go follow the ADHD CEO, because this guy is going to bring all kinds of content and perspective into your purview that will radically change the way that you engage if you're in the housing industry. Look, we all have a role that we play. We're all responsible as professionals, but it's so important to have people in our lives outside of the black and white of the business who add the color. And Ken, you're one of those people who add a ton of color to the work that we do.
Thank you so much. This has been super fun. It's a little therapeutic for me as well. Oh, and by the way, check out Knowledge Coop. If you go to knowledgecoop.com and then download the Knowledge Coop Plus app, you can download that for free, log in and stay in our community. And then that's where all of our stuff is. That's where the AI is built. That's where all of our CE and all that stuff is.
And don't forget the podcast lessons from last time. Been a ton of good people on it. And even just the sit down with beer that you did with Tony.
Oh my gosh.
Ryan.
That was fun.
That was amazing. So
yeah,
thank you for doing that.
We're going to do more of those.
Good.
All right, folks. Well, thanks again for joining us today on our episode of Building Bigger Lives. As you know, we are here every week bringing new content, special guests, and our desire is simply to expand the lens of your professional life. So thanks for joining us. I'm Michael Regan, along with Catherine Peterson, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great day.